Spiritualism, the belief that ghosts exist and we can communicate with them, came into being as a movement in 1848, when mediums began to spring up all over the United States and then in Britain. While some people may have been well-intentioned, genuinely convinced that they could contact the dead, most were frauds, using hidden accomplices, sleight of hand, and ingenious contraptions to hoodwink the vulnerable. Here are some of the ingenious tricks they used. With the lights turned down or put out completely, the medium invites the participants to hold hands or hold the wrist of the person to their left or right to prove there's no foul play. Pretending to enter a trance to communicate with the spirits, the medium twitches and jerks one hand loose, scrambling for it in the dark. The participants either side don't realise they've been tricked into taking the same hand. Using either their own hand, a waxwork replacement, a stuffed glove or a telescopic rod to reach across the table, the medium can now pretend a spirit is touching the audience. One account from 1925 detailed a ghostly farmer being summoned from the grave. The sound of him pumping water was produced by a collapsible trumpet being surreptitiously opened and closed. Should the ghostly tradesman have required it, the sound of sawing wood could also be made by dragging the trumpet across the floor or moving the collapsible sections up and down within each other. In other seances, the trumpet would be the centre of attention rather than a sneaky secret, channeling spooky whispers from the beyond. Many people were only too willing to believe these mediums really could contact the dead. With technology advancing so quickly in the Victorian era, anything seemed possible, and so many people fell for these dastardly tricks and handed over a handsome fee.
All right, thank you for coming back to join me on Bible topics that make you say, So you watched that brief video. Have you participated in a seance? Did you believe it was real? Or looking back, do you think you were tricked? More importantly, to get into the topic for today on Bible topics that make you say, do you believe that God condones seances? Or if not all seances, has he ever condoned a seance? Let's get into this topic, consulting the witch of Endor, as told in 1 Samuel chapter 28, and we're going to pick up in verse 7. It says, Saul then said to his servants, "Find me a woman who is a medium so I can go and consult her." His servants replied, "There is a woman at Endor who is a medium." Saul disguised himself by putting on different clothes and set out with two of his men. They came to the woman at night. Why did he disguise himself? I'll give you the answer in just a moment. Saul said, "Consult a spirit for me. Bring up for me the one I tell you." Verse 9, but the woman said to him, "You surely know what Saul has done, how he has killed the mediums and spiritists in the land. Why are you setting a trap for me to get killed?" So King Saul, as the woman said, had killed a lot of the witches who were doing the very work that he's coming to her to do. Why? Because when he was trying to serve the Lord, he killed them because God does not condone the practices of witches and spirit mediums. Somehow this particular witch did not get swept up when he was doing the killing. And so she's thinking, I think her spidey senses are going off, this may perhaps be a trap. And so he disguised himself so that he did not look like King Saul. Verse 10, then Saul swore to her by the Lord, "As surely as the Lord lives, nothing bad will happen to you because of this." Verse 11, who is it that you want me to bring up for you? The woman asked. "Bring up Samuel for me," he answered. When the woman saw Samuel, she screamed, and then she asked Saul, "Why did you deceive me? You are Saul." Why did she scream? Let's put a pin in that. 1 Samuel 28:13 says, but the king said to her, "Don't be afraid. What do you see?" "I see a spirit form coming up out of the earth." Then Saul asked her, "What does he look like?" "An old man is coming up. He's wearing a robe." Then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed his face to the ground and paid homage. Now, why did she scream? Well, I grew up in a religion that said that she really didn't conjure up Samuel, right? But others look at this and say, no, she really did conjure up Samuel. However, she was used to her familiar spirits, her demons pretending to be folks, if they even gave any pretense of pretending to be a dead person. So what came up threw her off guard because it really was Samuel. But does that seem right? God doesn't condone these things. Did he really allow communication between Samuel and Saul? Well, verse 15 says, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Samuel asked Saul. It said it was Samuel here, not a spirit playing trickery, but Samuel. "I'm in serious trouble," replied Saul. "The Philistines are fighting against me, and God has turned away from me. He doesn't answer me anymore, either through the prophets or in dreams. So I've called on you to tell me what I should do." Samuel used to have a special place in his heart for Saul. In fact, he anointed Saul, who was the first king of Israel. He was brokenhearted when Saul proved to be wicked, and Yahweh rejected him as his king and said, "I'm going to take the kingdom from him and give it to David." And so now that Samuel is dead, Saul has tried to reach out to God either directly and through prophets, and he's not hearing from God. So he feels as a last resort, he can conjure up Samuel from the dead and he will give him guidance. So he's playing trickery his own self. Can Samuel be fooled into helping Saul? Verse 16, Samuel answered, "Since the Lord has turned away from you and has become your enemy, why are you asking me?" In other words, I can't overrule God's judgment. The Lord has done exactly what he said through me. Like I already told you this when I was alive. You think I'm going to tell you something different, dead? He said through me, "The Lord has torn the kingship out of your hand and given it to your neighbor David. You did not obey the Lord and did not carry out his burning anger against Amalek. Therefore, the Lord has done this to you today. The Lord will also hand Israel over to the Philistines along with you. And guess what? Tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow." I used to love that song. "Tomorrow, you and your sons will be with me, and the Lord will hand Israel's army over to the Philistines." Saul, do you wish you hadn't conjured up Samuel? Verse 20, immediately Saul fell flat on the ground. He was terrified by Samuel's words and was also weak because he hadn't eaten any food all day and all night because he was fasting, hoping that I guess that would give him a better opportunity to actually reach Samuel and hear what he wanted to hear. The woman came over to Saul, and she saw that he was terrified and said to him, "Look, your servant has obeyed you. I took my life in my hands and I did what you told me to do. Like, please don't kill me now because you didn't get the result that you wanted. You didn't get the good news you wanted. Now, please listen to your servant. Let me set food in front of you. Eat, and it will give you strength so you can go on your way." Like, get on out of here. Jumping down to 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse 6, the war took place, and this is what happened the very next day. As Samuel said, so on that day, Saul died together with his 3 sons, his armor bearer, and all his men. So what he didn't want to happen, and he thought he could stop it from happening by getting in contact with Samuel, happened anyway. So let's back up. Did God condone a seance? Because aren't you confused? The Bible is against this. Exodus 22:18, the King James Version says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." God wanted witches killed, and Saul did kill a lot of witches. So why is he now consulting one? Well, we know why. He thought he'd get a different outcome by being able to reach Samuel, since God was no longer talking to him. Leviticus 19:31 says, "Though do not turn to mediums or consult spiritists, or you will be defiled by them. I am Yahweh your God." So Saul was a very stubborn and disobedient person who tried to do things his own way. Yet again, he thought doing things his own way would give him a different outcome than what Samuel told him when he was alive. Deuteronomy 18, 10 and 11 says, no one among you is to make his son or daughter pass through the fire, practice divination, tell fortunes, interpret omens, practice sorcery, cast spells, consult a medium or a familiar spirit, or inquire of the dead. And he did this very thing. What gives? Well, before I give you more information, I invite you now to check out my video, Are Spiritism, Fortune Telling, and Tarot Card Reading Demonic? What do you think? I love these pictures that I chose here. And does the dead haunt the living? I'll haunt you when I'm dead. And where do we go after death? Check out those videos. I put links in the description to them, and please share them with others. You'll find them very fascinating. So now back to, did God condone a seance? What do you think? Well, it appears he did. God makes evil sometimes serve his divine purposes. And so this story of Saul is unique, but it served a purpose. While God does not allow seances in general, this time he allowed Samuel to be contacted by Saul using this spirit medium, using this witch. There was no trickery like we saw in the opening video. This was real. Saul was disobedient and tried to thwart God's will. So God had a whip for this, Toby. He pierced the veil and allowed Samuel to converse with Saul. And the information he gave him was not what Saul wanted. God wanted him to know you can't get away from what's coming your way. And I stopped talking to you. I stopped communicating with you through dreams, and I stopped the prophets from telling you what you wanted to hear. And you think you're going to go above and around me and go directly to Saul, Samuel, who's already dead? I got a whip for you, Toby. He's going to tell you the same thing he told you when he was living. Now, a demon could have masqueraded as Samuel, but the very fact that the witch screamed shows that this was not a demon she may have been used to communicating with. It was truly Samuel. And this is not the only time God has allowed those who have passed on to be in communication. Matthew 17, 1 through 9 gives a story of the transfiguration where Jesus was communicating with Elijah and Moses, with several apostles present watching this. And Jesus said, don't tell anyone about this. And they didn't until after Jesus died. And we know about it because it's in the Gospels. So those are two unique times when God allowed communication between the living and those who have passed on. Nevertheless, we are not supposed to consult the dead. This is not something that he generally condones. He made an exception this time to serve his purpose. And he does not want us engaging in these activities because demons use spiritism to deceive us and separate us from the Lord. And if we get used to communicating with what we consider to be friendly spirits, that pulls us away from the true God. And then we start dabbling in evil before we know it. So if you need guidance, you want to know what's on the other side, you need direction, don't go to a horoscope, don't go to fortune teller, go to Christ and his word, the Bible, for true knowledge and guidance. Don't do like Saul did. You might get shocked about what you see on the other side. All right, so we have an example of people doing a seance thinking they're communicating with dead people. They're communicating with demons. And so if you need wisdom and guidance, pray for it. Psalm 119, 105 says, your word is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path. James 1 and 5 says, now if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and without criticizing, and it will be given to him. So cut off fellowship with darkness. reading your horoscope, tarot card readings, going to fortune telling, stellar. Stop that because you're inviting wicked spirits in, which could wreak havoc in your life. Instead, accept Jesus' invitation to come into fellowship with him. Romans 10, 9, and 13, it says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Please accept Jesus' invitation today. Come into fellowship with him. Come into the light and reject the darkness and those false seances. Because you're not really talking to your dead loved ones or dead people, period. You're communicating with the devil. All right. See you next time on Bible Topics that make you say, hmm.